You are not alone. Can you feel this space right here? How fragile it is, how deep it is, how vulnerable it is. Healing that it is. And yet, how do we move forward from here? How do I start a talk from here? And the first thing we get invited into is to just truly being present to the right here. Being present to that space within us that is that vulnerable, that space within us that is that fragile, that space within us that is invited to come together in sacred community. Can you feel the power of what happens with our grief and our sorrow when we're here together? It has a different shape to it. It has a different texture to it. Because we are not alone. And yet, at the same time that we have this sense of loss and grief, we've all experienced loss in some way. We've all experienced some sense of our heart being wrenched open. There is another part within us that is inviting us to move forward. There's something within us that is inviting us and calling us forward. And so in the midst of the pain, in the midst of the loss, which we have to acknowledge, we have to stand in, we have to. We have to be uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable right now. I'm probably not alone. Because this is hard. It's hard to tap into the space that just misses my dad so much. His birthday would have been tomorrow. It's hard. And yet at the same time, I am so grateful that I loved him this much. That the pain shows me just how much there was for me to be grateful for. And it's a balance, right? It's a real balance. And it can be very, very complicated as we try to engage with that impulse within us to move forward. Particularly in this teaching, we're a very forward-thinking teaching. We're a teaching that catches the vision of the good, which in this case, the absolute, we would call eternal life. We know there is eternal life. And yet we have to navigate this space within us that's dealing with this changeable, mutable, little L life. And everything that arises within us. And it's this dance between the absolute and the relative. And how do we hold that? And in this teaching, oftentimes, we want to just go to the absolute because it feels good. And it does feel good. We can be comforted by the idea of eternal life. We get to be comforted. And we need to move through this other piece. We need to figure out what that is within us that is calling us forward. And for each of us, it's going to be different. When my dad passed away, I spent probably 3 weeks, almost close to semi-comatose. I could do nothing but sit on the sofa. I couldn't talk to me. I couldn't talk. Didn't want to talk to anybody. Didn't want to connect with anyone. Chris, my wife, said that afterwards, she said, I was going to give you like another 3 or 4 days. And then I was thinking, she needs some serious help. Right? But it was my normal process of grieving. And then something called me forward. And it was hard to come forward. I felt like I was betraying the grief. I mean, there were so many things that were arising within me. If you were here for Danielle's beautiful concert, right? She shared her journey of how she was navigating that grief. And for her, it took years. And she's still navigating that grief. And look at me, I'm still navigating the grief too. This is what it means to be alive. This is what it means to be here now, is that we get to stand on that precipice of both of those things, of the love and the grace and the beauty and the joy and the connection and the light. And then we have that human experience of loss and pain and grief and sorrow. And it is the container that we get to hold it in that is so, so important. You know, I think about those who give their life for this country. And honestly, I am in awe. I am in awe for the fact that they believe so deeply in principle, and we believe in principles here. They believe so deeply in principle that they literally, not metaphysically, put their life on the line. Because that principle was so powerful for them. The principles of freedom, of justice, of maybe it's just the principle of connection and brotherhood and sisterhood in connection with a common goal. Whatever it was that drove them to literally place their life on the line is something that I am so in awe of. I want to share a picture with you. Can we hit the slide? I don't know if you guys have seen this image. It went viral this week. So this is Second Lieutenant Alex Idrich. I believe I'm pronouncing his name correctly. And he is a recent graduate from West Point. And this picture was caught during the West Point ceremony. Right? This image was caught during the West Point graduation ceremony. And Alex went to bed and woke up the next morning and found out that he was a sensation. That his picture was now everywhere. And he had some things to say. Once he realized what was going on with this image of him, he wrote some comments on Twitter and Instagram to share what was going on for him in that moment. And this is what he had to say. Men and women who have preserved the very essence of the human condition stood in that position and took the same oath. Men who scaled the face of adversity and liberated Europe from fascism and Nazism. Women like Captain Greast, Lieutenant Haver, Major Jaster, who rewrote the narrative and challenged the status quo to prove themselves worthy of being called Rangers. I could not help but be flooded with emotions, knowing that I will be leading these men and women who are willing to give their all to preserve what we value as the American way of life. To me, that is the greatest honor. Can you show the next picture? And there he is in that celebration. Now, what makes his story so amazing is that he is a Haitian immigrant who moved here in 2009. And in 7 years, he managed to graduate with top honors in physics from West Point. And from the time he was a young boy, he had dreams of being a pilot. Now, Haiti doesn't have any airplanes. They don't have any airplanes. They don't have an air force. They don't have airplanes. It's not, they don't have a system the way we do. And he would see the humanitarian aid planes arrive. And he wanted to be a pilot. He just got accepted into the Air Force Training Academy to become a pilot. That is what he's going to be doing next. He had to give up something in order for this dream to make itself known. He had to leave his family of art. He had to leave his family. He had to leave his community. He had to leave his country. Because something within him was calling him forth. Something within him was saying, I need to be this. I need to become this. The thing, that circle of life, was calling him forward, even when it made no sense whatsoever. How could he possibly become a pilot? How could that ever happen? So what are you afraid of? What are you afraid of sacrificing in your life? in order for this thing that is trying to reveal itself through you, for it to show up more fully and more powerfully as your life? What values, what core principles are your guiding beacon that you are willing to let the old fall away? So now we're going to enter the world of metaphysics, right? What part of you needs to die away? What do you need to sacrifice, to give up, in order for the circle of life to flow through you, to allow your next becoming to emerge? So Chris and I have some news. And it's interesting because it's actually the perfect space to share our news. So Chris and I are about 3/4 of the way through the application process for becoming foster adopt parents. So basically, we're pregnant right now. We are due sometime in August, probably, maybe September. We are looking to adopt a girl, maybe 2 siblings, and we're looking at the ages between 3 and 8 years old. Let me tell you that as we have stepped into this process, we have had to deal with the fact that we are going to be sacrificing something. We have no mistakes about this.
Boy.
We have an amazing life right now, folks. We have an amazing life. And yet something within us is calling us forward to become something else, to expand our understanding of family, to make it larger in some way, bigger, more encompassing. And so we have been in a little bit of a process of mourning, of grief, of realizing, like, we're not going to be able to do this anymore. This isn't going to be our life anymore. This isn't going to be how we're going to be operating in the world. All the attachments that we have to it, all the joy that it brings us, we have got to sacrifice it and let it go in order to let something else new emerge. And let me tell you, it is terrifying. It really is. There are moments where we just get hit with the terror of, like, what are we doing? These kids that are going to come to us experience so much loss. Experience so much loss and pain. They are going to be this. What we're in today, that's what these kids are going to be. They've been separated from their family. They've been separated from what's familiar. And yet our guiding principle is love. We are here. Chris and I agree that we are here to love and to be loved. That we are here to stand in that firmly. That is our guiding principle. And so these children are going to come into our life. And there's a really good chance, we've been warned, that they will resent us because we are not their real parents. There's a really good chance that they're going to be angry. And we're going to be the nearest targets. And yet, we believe in the principle of love. We are willing to lay down our safe little world and enter into this space that is an emotional landmine field. The way foster adoption works here in California, it's called concurrent planning. And so for that first year, every effort is being made to reunify those children with their biological family. So they are living with us, and yet everybody, including us, is on board for that biological parent to be able to heal themselves enough that they can welcome their own children back. So even though they may be with us for a year, even 2, it doesn't necessarily mean that we will get to adopt them. Once again, what do we believe in? Our guiding principle is love. Our guiding principle is that we are here to love and to be loved. And let me tell you, folks, it took a while for her and I to work through this one. Because this is a real sacrifice. This is our hearts open. This is our hearts wrenched apart if those children go back to their biological parents. And yet, at the same time, if we're truly in service to love, then that is the best and their parents get it together, that is the best thing for these kids, to be reunited with their family. So that's the risk we're taking. We are risking, we are opening our hearts up in the most vulnerable, the most exposed way possible, because there is a principle that is calling to express through us more firmly, more amazingly, more powerfully. So what is your principle? What do you stand in, come what may, even if it means the tears, even if it means the loss, even if it means the grief? Because guess what, folks? The loss and the grief and the fears and all of that are part of being human. And we have our spiritual principles that anchor us in the absolute to remind us that there is something more. And yet the continual call is that we have to risk it. We have to risk it. We have to open ourselves up in a way, because what you value will sustain you. What you value, what you anchor yourself in, will sustain you, come what may. Because I do know that even if these kids end up going back to their biological parents, what a gift that they had a soft landing space to be in the midst of that process. What a gift that we got to show up as love in that way. A gift not just for them, really, our gift. I'm talking about Chris and my gift. That we got to learn how to be that, truly be that, unconditionally. Love makes us strong enough to withstand anything. We all have these ideas about where we're called to be and what we're called to be, and we have our dreams. And my rule of thumb is this, that if you can imagine how it's all going to happen, that is not a God idea. That's no idea. And that may still be an awesome idea. It doesn't mean you can't do it. But it's your idea. It's when you get to the place that something is calling you forward that you have no idea how this is possibly going to work, how it's going to happen. Chris and I have no idea. I mean, really, folks, no idea. How are two full-time or more working mothers going to raise kids that are, need love and connect? How on earth are we going to make that happen? And we will. Because this is a God idea. Let me tell you, this idea has not gone away. It has not diminished with time. It has not been something that we would keep setting it aside. And then it would come back. And we keep setting it aside. And it would come back. Anybody here relate to that? Mm-hmm. So whatever it is within you that is calling forth for you to show up as it, do it. Don't let the fear hold you back. Don't let the unknown hold you back. The unknown is the proof that it's a God idea. The unknown means that, and it doesn't mean that it's actually necessarily all going to work out the way you want it to work out. But it means that you are supported and sustained for the entire process. Because we anchor ourselves in principle. It's out of this that we become reborn. It's out of this, like these gladiola bulbs, that something within us gets to die away. Chris and my life is two adult women with no other concerns except our own. Something gets to die away. And it will nourish. Everything that we are right now is the nourishment for what's going to arise. But it's going to look completely different. It's going to feel completely different. The circle of life is calling us always to embrace the pain and the sorrow and the grief, because it is part of what we are here to walk through. And to never let that stop us from moving forward. To never let that stop us from what we are becoming, because no matter what, folks, the circle of life is relentless. keep working you. It's going to keep working you. So let go of the resistance. Let go of the fact that you have to know what it's going to look like. And the biggest of all is let go of being afraid of where we were today. That vulnerable space. That painful space. That space of grief. We cannot avoid that space. So instead, we celebrate it, and we are renewed and reborn. Elia Kazan, I'm going to close with this quote because I think it's perfect. The film director says, "You've got to risk your life every 6 months to stay alive." You've got to risk your life every 6 months to stay alive. This is who we are. We are an evolving, expanding, progressive expression of the divine that is always seeking a greater expression. And we get to walk it all, the grief and the sorrow and the pain and the joy and the celebration and the beauty. And we just get to say yes to it and open ourselves up to it more fully, more powerfully. This is what we're here to be and to do. So let's take a breath together. And we're just going to seal this in prayer. We're just going to take a moment. And we're just going to become aware of whatever it is that we're being asked to sacrifice. Whatever it is, that little comfortable whatever for you that is asking to fall away. Where is the space where you have hardened your heart, closed yourself because the pain is too hard, too difficult, too overwhelming? Wherever that is for you, we're just going to hold that in light. We're going to hold it in the absolute and allow it to make itself known to you more fully. We're going to breathe into that space, knowing that we are large enough containers that we can hold this awareness of the eternal life, of the eternal joy, of the eternal beauty, and we can hold the part that just wants to curl up and cry. And that we can hold all of that simultaneously. That they're not contradictions. That they are all part of this same divine calling that is our life. So I know that for each of us, there is wisdom, there is guidance, there is support, there is everything that each of us needs in order to stand firmly in the principle, what do we care about? That we are willing to let the old life die away. Knowing it is revealing itself through, to, and as all of us perfectly and magnificently, we just open our hearts in gratitude. Gratitude for those who have done this already and are our model. Gratitude for the possibility that is our life for healing, for wholeness. Gratitude for the joy and the pain, how it all lives as us. For this and so much more, we do give thanks. Releasing it into the law of life, knowing it is done. And in agreement, we all say, and so it is.
And so it is.
Amen.